So we have him now, Senator Jeff Merkley, who is one of my favorites. He's the real deal. He is the change he wants to see and has been for years in Oregon. Very excited to have you on the show. Thank you so much for joining me, sir.
Oh, you're so welcome, Pete. Wonderful to be with you.
I do have to say here at the top, I am. There is some amount of shame with the fact that I've never visited your state. And my aunt, my dad's sister, who I'm close with, Julie Pimentel. Do you know Julie and Dan? They live outside Eugene. They've been begging me to go. Can you put the nail in the coffin and tell me why I need to come to Oregon, why anybody does?
Well, can you imagine how disruptive it would be to your life? Because you'll come to Oregon, you'll visit, and you'll never leave. And we will love having you join our state.
Well, that's what I hear. You know, the only sadly, the only, I guess, drawbacks are in Oregon and around the country are climate issues. You know, when I think of Oregon, I can't believe I think of this now, but when I think of the West and the Pacific Northwest, I do think of the wildfires. And I just wanted to get you to comment on, you know, the climate crisis as we are in it right now, as it pertains to your state.
Oh, we see it firsthand. A few years ago, we had the red zone, which was a zone where if you fly over it, all you see is red dying trees as far as the eye can see. Why? Because it's warmer. And so the pine beetles were just having a field day and killing everything in sight. I was just up on the Pacific Crest Trail a couple of weeks ago, and there was a section I was on where every pine tree at about 3 to 4 feet off the ground had a big scar on it. And generally the tree was dead. It was still standing, was dead. They died long enough now that the forest is starting to grow back up through these dead trees. But it really reminds you of that. And then the forest fires. Longer, hotter fire season. And then the snowpack, which is gone too soon. And so it means our trout streams, our salmon streams are warmer and smaller, really bad. And that results in a lot of fish killed. And then there's the Pacific Ocean, which is acidifying so much that it is affecting the sea life. And we had this very strange phenomenon of a virus among the sea stars. And the result was they all died, all of them. And they eat the blue sea urchin, and the blue sea urchin eats the base of the kelp. So without the sea stars, the kelp forests are disappearing off the coast of Oregon, and they nurture all kinds of other species. Well, I could go on, but I think you get the idea. It's global warming is a catastrophe, and we're on the front line.
Given that portfolio of problems facing your state alone, how do your constituents, how do the citizens of Oregon, how do you message to them? Like, I think people look at it sometimes as it's an issue to deal with down the road, or it's not as serious. But in Oregon, I mean, if you're just smelling that smoke, if you're dealing with any of those issues, much less all of those issues, you would think people would want to see action. How do you communicate it, and how do the people there think about it?
The key is to talk about the facts on the ground. When I first came to the Senate and started doing a town hall in every county, and I have all these very red rural counties, people were very skeptical about climate. The fossil fuel industry was putting out a lot of misinformation about it. And I was down at town hall in Southern Oregon, and someone stood up and said, "Wait, how can you really be serious about jobs when you're talking about climate? And they're not going to destroy our jobs." I said, okay, here we are in Klamath County. How many folks here are familiar with the red zone, with the pine trees dying? And like everybody in the room raises their hand. I said, well, how many people here fish? And everybody raised their hands, because half actually fish and the other half didn't want to admit they don't fish. And I said, so you know that the trout streams are not, they're too warm. I mean, we're cold water fish world, and if the water's warm, it's a problem. And how many people are familiar with the algae in the nearby lakes? Oh yeah, they all were. And the algae have two problems. One is they when they die, they strip the oxygen out of the lake, and they produce toxins that kill things. And so when I went through the list, I said, so, hey, listen, this is why I'm fighting on climate change, because it's affecting our farming, our forestry, and our fishing. And you all see the effects of it right here on the ground. And the room in this rural red county broke into applause. And it's like, you got to talk about the facts on the ground people know about, not some study about the oceans rising 100 years from now.
Well, so one of the main issue I wanted to get you on to talk about, because you're one of the co-sponsors of this bill in the Senate, is the Break Free from Plastic Pollution Act. I talked with Judith Enck of Beyond Plastic, who said you got to talk with Senator Merkley, and so this is a huge issue, but yet messaging this one, I don't know about you, but every time I talk about this, I get people making fun of me, like in the weirdest kind of way, like, oh, you can't, oh, plastic, really? Like we don't have enough issues and you're going to talk about plastic. And they, I'm a comedian, make any joke you want. I'm all for it. But I got to say, it hurts a little bit, Senator. I mean, this is a really serious, important issue. I laid out some of the statistics earlier. How do you message this one to get people to care? Because people really like to dismiss it.
So you're absolutely right that many people are unfamiliar with plastics being a big environmental problem. But they're starting to get the word because there's more and more articles. And some of those articles are about our marine life that is digesting plastic and dying, seals, fish, so on and so forth. So that's kind of like, oh man, I don't like to see the turtles all die because they're eating little pieces of plastic. And now there's more and more information out about microplastics, where the plastics ground up or filaments that are put into our water and our streams from your washing machines, because we have plastic clothing called nylon clothing or acrylic clothing, and those microplastics end up, and it's now estimated between the water we drink and the food we eat, each of us, I'm going to reach for a credit card here, we consume this much plastic every week, each one of us. And this plastic is full of chemicals, things like endocrine disruptors that can't be good for human health. And so when people hear, damn, I don't want that plastic in my food, and I don't want it in my water. And by the way, you go out and catch a fish in the ocean or in a river, it's going to have plastic in it now, just the microplastic incorporated into its flesh. And then there's another aspect that people are generally not familiar with, which is plastics being made from natural gas. Natural gas is primarily methane. Methane leaking from pipes and methane leaking from where it's produced in fracking fields is a major contributor to climate chaos and warming the planet. And so making that plastic is causing a lot of trouble. Now, I can tell you back in Oregon, it's not that hard to talk about this because we were the first state to have a bottle bill. We're very proud of that. It really cleaned up the plastic bottles and the aluminum cans and so on and so forth. So it's been part of our heritage to try to create that cycle, that circular cycle of recycling. But truly with plastic, when you see that blue bin and you throw a plastic bottle in, that's not recycling, that's wish cycling. You're hoping that that's going to be recycled, but the odds are it's not. Very little plastic you put into a blue recycling bin gets recycled. It used to get shipped off to China. Now, basically, it gets thrown into landfills. So we hear that mantra in our head about, recycle, reduce, reuse, the 3 R's. We're going to save the planet with the 3 R's. With plastics, it's burned, buried, or it's borne out to sea, and all 3 are bad.
That credit card you just held up, luckily, I don't think I could see the number through the video, Senator. But
I know, that's like holding it with the wrong side. So I wouldn't have that problem.
But the point is, it's going to live longer than us. That credit card will be there when our bodies are gone. I mean, it's really important for people to realize how long this stuff stays around. Now, you were, of course, a state congressman. I think my notes say you were the Speaker of the House, as a matter of fact, in Oregon at one point.
In Oregon, yes.
Why do we need federal legislation versus state by state to break free from plastic?
Well, the challenge is national, and there's a national lobby that really zooms in to try to stop any state from making progress. Some states, you have things that work. Well, let's borrow their ideas. Let's take the ideas that work that they've piloted, if you will. For example, extended producer responsibility, where a producer has to take responsibility for the plastic that's in their packaging or in their products. And some of the producers going, well, do I really need to put this plastic part into my product? Do I really need to put plastic packaging in when I could do it with a cardboard, et cetera? So that's one key piece. Another is to really have truth in recycling. There's a lot of products that have a little triangle on them and where they say recyclable or something. And the fact is, no, not really. It's just like there aren't meaningful standards and there's not enforced standards. I had this, I was traveling and there was a paper plate in the hotel and it had recyclable and it also said like made from recycled goods or something like that. It had two statements. And then I saw all this little tiny statements below it printed on the plate. I'm like, what's this? And so I get out my phone, I take a picture, and I blow it up because it's so tiny I can't read what it's saying. And it basically said, well, not really.
No.
It's not really made from recycled fibers. And by the way, it's not really recyclable either if you put food on this plate, because you can't recycle it if it has food on it. And it's like in the small print. And I'm like, this is like, okay, well, that's about.
That seems like it should have made your Instagram page. I got to see that. I've never heard of that. That's nuts. Well,
I think you could do a whole comic routine on that.
Oh yeah. No, I mean, I have the whole routine about just the idea of how convenience is so important to us that we use a plastic bag for like 10 feet.
Yeah.
Like we walk 10 feet with an item in our bag, we get in our car, take it out, and then devour it or use
those plastic bags. They're a nightmare.
Yeah.
I walk out of the grocery store sometimes, and because I forget to take bags with me, and I have like the product stacked up from my hand all the way up my arm, and they're like, "Really? You're going to walk like 3 blocks to your car, carrying like 2
I love to hear it. I love to hear it. I'm the same way. And sometimes I did this yesterday. I do take a plastic bag. I had a bunch of food, and I walk it back in, and they look at me like I'm an absolute sociopath. But I don't care. I can't. I don't need it. I want to return it, and I got my steps in. But the big
and when you return it, they take it, and then as soon as you walk away, they throw it in the trash.
They're like, this is, well, I do look like an unsavory fella. I understand. But the real challenge here is money. And you know all about this, and you talk all about this. There is a lobby. You just touched on it, a plastics lobby. It's really the oil lobby, the natural gas lobby. You mentioned they come in when states or local municipalities try to change these laws. They come in with their high-powered lobbyists and change it. But how do we fight this? This gets into the conversation about campaign finance. It gets into the conversation about filibuster reform, for which you have been an absolute champion for. So when we're talking about plastic, we have to talk about the special interests and what influence they have in campaign donations. How do you want to take this one?
Well, the fossil fuel industry really is the most powerful lobby in America. And for people to understand how that came to be, in 2014, they decided they were going to take advantage of the Citizens United Supreme Court decision and put hundreds of millions of dollars into Senate races. And it worked. 6 Senate seats went from blue to red with this third-party attack ads. And, just like the airways were inundated with these attack ads. And so they put Mitch McConnell in power. And because they put him in power, they have been the force that says, hey, jump, and Mitch McConnell says, how high? I mean, and so it has silenced all the Republicans who used to be environmentalists, who used to talk about climate. Their lips are zipped, or they whisper it like, Jeff, I'm really kind of with you on this. I want to help on this, but I can't have a public vote on my record against the fossil fuel industry. So, hey, can we arrange this so that it's a yes/no vote? And I'm like, yeah, okay, yeah, voice vote, okay, let's do that. And but it tells you how powerful they are. That grown men and women who are at the peak of their political careers in the U.S. Senate have to speak in little soft tones, like they're, like the CIA is after them or something, or, on things involving fossil fuels, and plastics are fossil fuels. It's a huge, huge problem. So we have to take on Citizens United, and that means we can't overturn it. We're not going to get a constitutional amendment to overturn it, but at least we can create disclosure. Once you have disclosure, you can go on the attack. I had the situation with my 2014 campaign, that same year when so many other people lost, is the Koch brothers were bragging about coming after me in Oregon. And I decided, I put up a campaign ad, and I said, out-of-state oil and coal billionaires come to Oregon, like my opponent. They share an agenda. Here it is. It's awful. They think it's it's wonderful for them. It's terrible for us. That was my ad. And you know what? They shut down their operation and left my state. They did not want to be called out in that fashion. My team was terrified to call them out because they said, Jeff, this is going to backfire. Instead of putting $5 million in, which is what our estimate was at that point, they may put $50 million into your race. So you may not, they'll be everywhere, and they'll to make a lesson out of you. And nobody else put up ads against them for that reason. Maybe I got lucky They were so shocked and surprised they didn't have time to figure out what's going on and said, well, let's retreat and figure it out. But we have to take them on directly about what they're doing. Our planet is burning up. And we have no time to spare. And right now we've got a conversation going on in this building as you and I are speaking about climate measures, and the fossil fuel industry is trying to get subsidies for coal and natural gas into this bill that's supposed to be fighting climate change.
So how do you give me and listeners hope, your constituents hope, because last week they cut out the climate stuff, some of it from Build Back Better. Today, I just heard paid family leave apparently is out. What's your relationship like with Senators Sinema or Manchin? How do you get them to come around on this? It seems like there's really nothing, any pressure point that could be used.
Listen, when it's a 50-50 Senate and someone has a state that has different views, the state of West Virginia is very different than the state of Oregon. State of West Virginia is the reddest state in the sense that they had a 40% spread in favor of Trump, the highest in the nation. You're going to, and their whole kind of cultural legacy, economy, small towns, it's all built on coal. So they're going to have a different viewpoint. But how can we help those families and those communities transition? Because natural gas is taking them out, and it's taking out the coal, not renewables. How can we help those communities transition and build a bridge that works for families in West Virginia and works for families in Oregon? That's what we're trying to do, to find that intersection. We're not going to get nearly a bill that's strong enough. And I'm really worried about the fossil fuel industry inserting stuff in that really hurts climate. So I'm fighting that right now. But we're going to have to elect more climate champions to the Senate so that we don't have a 50-50 split.
I really appreciate you joining me. I know you have been also a real vociferous champion in defense of voting rights. All of the stuff that we just talked about, pretty much every issue, including campaign finance, doesn't matter if we don't uphold the legislation, the pinnacle of Dr. Martin Luther King and the civil rights movement's work. The Voting Rights Act needs to be restored. More recently, during the Bush administration, the entire United States Senate, all the Republicans voted to confirm the Voting Rights Act. It's the Supreme Court gutted it, and then it's been damaged further. And then we saw all of these states take action to restrict voting, to make voting harder. This is the most important thing. You've been very outspoken. What do you want to say about it? What can be done?
Yeah, we have three powerful forces corrupting our voting system. And one is gerrymandering.
Yeah.
And it was interesting to hear my colleagues kind of salivating over gerrymandering on steroids with the redistricting that's going on right now. They figure they have a 15-seat advantage in the House due to gerrymandering. That is the Republicans over the Democrats. And they could amp that up to 25. And so if you believe in equal representation, gerrymandering is a huge poison in the system because it steals the right to equal representation.
Yep.
And the second big challenge we have is dark money with which billionaires buy elections. That's what the fossil fuel billionaires did in 2014 that I was talking about earlier. And so when you see those incredible amounts of attack ads coming from groups with really nice names, like, I don't know, Generation Opportunity or, American Apple Pie, and they're running vicious attack ads, that's dark money, and it works. But it works through disinformation campaigns, essentially, and it takes away the ability to have a debate over real issues and therefore a legitimate electoral process. And then the most diabolical of all are new strategies to block the ballot box. I recently posed the question to a panel in a hearing of why did former President Trump hate vote by mail? And so it's interesting to consider. Why did he latch onto that? I mean, vote by mail is more secure than any other form of voting. You have to put your signature on the back of the envelope. They compare it to your signature on file. And there's no way for election day manipulation. And by that, I mean, there's all these tried and true tactics to keep groups from voting on election day. You change the location of the voting booths, different address this year. You put out false information about where they're located. You put out false information saying, we hope you come next week when the election is actually this week, so people actually miss the election. You understaff it, so people are in a really long line. You put the voting location where there's no parking, so that people are like, oh my goodness, how am I possibly going to get in to vote when I use a walker or have a hip problem or so forth. Those are true forms of stealing votes from Americans. And it's a tried and true practice, but it only works on election day. So therefore, vote by mail, in which people don't have to go to a voting booth and have several weeks to return the ballot, is the antidote. And Trump didn't like the antidote because he wants to be able to manipulate the election on election day using all these horrific strategies. They're kind of, you think about some of the strategies of old, where people say, oh, you want to register to vote? You know, recite some clause of the Constitution and write an essay on it. And they say, sorry, you failed. Or, you know, something like saying, oh, we've got a jar full of marbles. How many marbles are in this jar? Or we even have in history situations where white men on horses would all form a barricade of the actual box to drop your ballot into, so that you as a Black American or Hispanic American couldn't physically get to the box in order to drop your ballot. These are modern forms of that. So the For the People Act, which I led in the Senate, we worked through the summer to get 50 of us onto it. We had 49 sponsors. Now we have 50 sponsors. And we really tried to take on all three of these issues and this new set of election subversion issues. Things where like a state legislature can take over a local election board, or one person can go to a voting location and invalidate or challenge and make a nightmare out of 1,000 people who come there to vote. So the bill got in a way stronger with this addition, and now it's called Freedom to Vote. And Senator Manchin has been working to get Republicans on board, and they all said no. They all said no. Why? I mean, across America, members of the Republican Party often support these reforms. They don't like gerrymandering. They know it's corrupt. They don't like dark money. They don't think billionaires should buy elections. But in the Senate, these things are considered a key to Republican senators winning their elections. And so they all said no. And then when it came to John Lewis Voting Rights Act, which is the replication of the 1965, which is pre-clearance. It means if you're going to change your voting rules, they have to be inspected first to see if they're being done in a prejudicial fashion to stop particular groups from voting. And that pre-clearance worked so well. And like you noted, everybody on both sides of the aisle supported it. And now not a single senator will support pre-clearance. Not one Republican senator will support it. And so it's just evidence of the deep corruption of my Republican colleagues on the issue of integrity in voting.
But to tie it all together, the U.S. Senate, you have the votes. Both bills have passed out of the House. You have 50 votes in the Senate to pass this, right? But it's the filibuster.
50 plus a vice president will pass it.
And so is there any chance that you've heard from talking to folks in the administration, the president, much less anybody in the Senate, your colleagues in the Senate, that you could get around this somehow by getting rid of the filibuster, at least with the voting rights? It's
and Pete, when you say filibuster, people think, oh, well, so Republicans are standing up on the floor and giving speeches in order to delay the vote, and we just have to wait them out. No, that's not the way it works. Since 1975, you have to have 60 votes to close debate. So those who want to essentially continue debate, that is obstruct getting to a final vote, they don't even have to vote at all. You can be 59-0 and you'd still lose. The 59 would lose because you have to have 60 votes. And that was a quirk, an accidental shift when the Senate went from 2/3 to close debate to 3/5. But they said, oh, but instead of those present and voting, we'll make it out of the body. And I don't expect people to get their hands around this easily because it's really confusing. But what it amounts to is the filibuster became a no-show, no-effort obstruction. Combine that with Mitch McConnell's strategy of obstruct and delay and the partisan warfare conducted through separate cable channels, and you have the perfect formula for paralysis. It's often said that President Washington said about the Senate that it should be a cooling saucer. Apparently it's apocryphal. But the idea was your tea in the saucer should cool before you drink it so you don't burn your mouth, right? But the Senate today is not a cooling saucer. It's not a kind of more deliberative version of the House. It is a deep freeze where the minority can paralyze the place. They have a veto over policy. Now, the Republicans changed the rules on their priorities so that it's not a two-way street. This doesn't affect both sides equally. They got rid of the filibuster on tax cuts for the rich because that was their priority. They got rid of the filibuster in order to be able to do Supreme Court justices by simple majority. They got rid of the filibuster so that they could, or change the rules by simple majority so that they could proceed to accelerate the packing of the lower court with Federalist Society members who are basically about corporations taking over America. Could do that with 2 hours of debate instead of 30 hours of debate, so 15-time acceleration. So the Republicans said, no, we want our cake and eat it too. When we're in the majority, we can get things done because our priority is a simple majority. And when they're minority, we can veto the Democratic agenda for the people. That imbalance is destroying our country. And so we have to overcome it. And when I first started talking about this, I came here in 2009. In 2011, I put up a public filibuster or talking filibuster saying, no, get rid of this no show, no effort obstruction. Every Democrat who's here today in the Senate, who was here in 2011, voted for my rule change. So that was 10 years ago. Since then, I've spent so much time cultivating the conversation about how the Senate worked as a deliberative body. I mean, there's a reason it was called the greatest deliberative body in the world, but no longer. Now it is like the worst legislative body in the world. It can't address the issues facing America. So we've got to modify the filibuster. We don't have to get rid of it. There is value in the majority not being run over the top of the minority. The minority can slow things down to get amendment opportunities, to get compromise, to make sure the press has seen the bill, to make sure the members have seen what's in the bill, to make sure the people of America have seen what's in the bill. That's important. But slowing things down is one thing. Vetoing things from being able to hold a vote, that is deep, profound corruption for the powerful over the people, and it has to end.
Do you think it can get done, voting rights?
We have a shot at it. We have a shot at it. Like I said, every Democrat voted for a public filibuster. If Democrats have to, everyone who was here in 2011, if it's a public filibuster and we apply the rules of the Senate, which say you can only speak twice to an issue, you can speak for a long, long time, but you can only speak twice, we have a shot of being able to get voting rights passed.
Thank you so much for joining me today. I do sleep better knowing that you are in the United States Senate. And I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me, because I know that you're super smart and care deeply about these issues and that you're the real deal. I hope we can do it again. Thank you so much, Senator.
Pleasure. And I know you're not sleeping well because you know how much is hanging in the balance and how precarious the effort is to win. But if you're not on the battlefield, you can't win. We're on the battlefield. We're going to keep fighting, and hopefully we catch that magic combination, and I can come back on your show when we've passed the Freedom to Vote Act.
I noticed on your Instagram, when you were a young man, you used to have a mustache. I'd like to tease you here at the end. Is there any chance of that reappearing to bring back the mustache, Senator?
I'll ask my wife, but I know in advance that that's an absolute no. You don't have any pictures of when I had a long beard?
Oh, no, I haven't seen those.
Well,
there's some old pictures of you looking like a wizard somewhere.
Been carefully eliminating those pictures.
Thank you so much for talking to me. Keep up the great work.
Thank you. Take care now.